Friday, 6:30 p.m. The first thing I notice as I approach Virginia's house is an oil stain halfway down their drive. I made that stain when I serviced my Gemini. The entire contents of my sump spilt straight onto the concrete. I linger in the drive for about 5 minutes, wondering whether or not to go in. The past is like a cracker that has failed to go off. You disturb that cracker, and it could go off in your face. 6:40 p.m. A ragu kiln is basically an open fire that people in skivvies and caftans gather round to chat, drink and mispronounce words like croissant. They say croissant. Everyone makes a rough-looking pot, dips it in glaze, throws it into the flames, then, after an appropriate time, they take it out, drop it in sawdust, and then they've got a poorly made brightly coloured pinch pot. 6:42 p.m. The first person I see is Virginia's mother, Kay. She's a similar shape to Virginia, but she's fatter and wears a tracksuit. Behind her are lots of 30-plus women wearing large primary-coloured earrings and bright caftans with African designs on them. A few porky men in polo necks are grazing among them as well. I wonder if one of them is Virginia's boyfriend. Kay introduces me around while we look for Virginia. I'm only interested in seeing Virginia or Virginia's boyfriend, so I barely register the people being introduced to me. Most of them are about as memorable as a white t-shirt. I'm like a sparrow contemplating a drink from a bird bath in a backyard known to have cats. I look here, I look there, I look everywhere. Eventually, I see Virginia. Virginia's hair is shorter. She looks more robust, less tanned, but the sunniness that could power a small log cabin is still evident. When she sees me, she yells out, "Sandy!" and runs towards me at 1,000,000 miles an hour with her arms outstretched, like she's about to take off. Oh, I hope she isn't going to leap on me. But Virginia's airborne before I complete that thought, so there's nothing I can do to avoid her. Her legs wrap around my waist, and her pelvis catches me on the sternum with a thud. Ah, it's good to feel her again. She tows me around, reacquainting me with folk I just met, introducing people I don't know, and showing me to people I don't want to know. Finally, we stop at a tall, sinewy guy. "And this is Duncan," she says. My eyes run over him like two rats escaping from hungry dogs. Duncan's a private school type. He looks as if he's into rock climbing, kayaking, and environmental issues. His fringe skims his eyebrows. His skin is clear. His eyes are clear. I hate him. "I'm going to England with Duncan," says Virginia, grabbing his arm and mine at the same time, forming a link between the past and the present. It's odd when the old boyfriend meets the new boyfriend. I'd rather be the new boyfriend. 7:15 p.m. Half-heartedly make pinch pots with Virginia, Duncan, and some of Kay's more divorced friends. "Your pot looks like an obese woman in calipers," Duncan says at one point, causing everyone to laugh. Now, a laugh is a laugh, but I must admit I was a little hurt by that because I was really trying. I save face by throwing in a few havias. But Duncan is better than me at everything. He not only makes better pinch pots and is better looking, he has more effective funny gimmicks than me. For example, he does this impression of Captain Ahab, the guy with the wooden leg from Herman Melville's classic novel Moby Dick. It's quite clever, actually. He places his index finger in his mouth, flicks it against his cheek with a snapping motion to make a low popping sound. Then he repeats the action to make a high-pitched popping sound. It sounds exactly like someone with a wooden leg walking across a ship's deck. It's juvenile, but gee, it has depth. 9:35 p.m. I'm about to leave the party. I'm hoping to whisk Virginia away for just a second so we can heavy pet for old time's sake. I waddle over to a group of people, including Virginia and Duncan, and the first thing I hear is Duncan saying, "So, I went closer to the dam." Naturally, when I hear the word dam, my ears prick up. "We see the tail of an aircraft sticking out of the water," he says, "and all these little boats around it." Suddenly, these army guys appear and say, "You can't come any further. It's a restricted area." We identify ourselves as ASIO, but the guy simply repeats, "It's a restricted area. You have to F off." "So you found the plane?" I ask him. He says, "No, even though I can see the tail sticking out of the water." You know why they don't want anyone to know about the plane? It's carrying mustard gas. I think I speak for the others listening to Duncan at the time when I say we long for just one more sentence from Duncan, one more snippet of information. For instance, how does he know the plane is carrying mustard gas? Sadly, nothing is forthcoming. I'd love to ask him, but he gave me such a hard time making pinch pots, I don't think I can bear to be ridiculed again. Duncan works for ASIO. Why is ASIO searching for the plane? I suppose ASIO would have access to confidential information, so it could be true. Townsville is a military base. When I return to Pleasant Avenue, I'll be like Marco Polo returning to Italy with noodles. No one else in Pleasant Avenue could have this information. Likewise, Duncan can't possibly know that my neighbour is somehow involved with this plane in the dam. Maybe Marco Polo didn't go to China. Maybe he discovered pasta 3 kilometres from his house. We only have Marco's word. I wonder why Mr. Gumley is involved with mustard gas. I can't say goodbye without asking Virginia some questions about Duncan. I start with relationship questions so she's not suspicious. Do you love him? Does he love you? Is he better than me? And so on. Then I throw in the question I really want to ask, but I try to sound casual when I ask. What does Duncan do? He works for the government, she says. Doing what? Computers. Sounds like an important job. Suppose so? High up? Dunno, babe. He was on the search for the missing plane the other night? Dunno, she says. I begin to say, how does he know? But stop myself. Maybe she's not allowed to say anything. Maybe I don't want her to say anything because that would spoil everything. Her hand gathers my hair into a small clump. Then her fingers knead some of the more wiry strands on my fringe, causing them to fuse together. Oh, that's going to hurt when I comb it out tomorrow. Her warm eyes close. She kisses me softly. Then she leaves. 10:30 p.m. I'm a little emotional as I leave Virginia's. I feel a mixture of emptiness and excitement. Excitement because I've been handed this unbelievable information. Emptiness because Virginia and I will never marry. We'll never have children with my eyes, her nose, her hair, her lips, her legs, and her ability with her hands. I truly believed Virginia and I would get back together one day, but now I'm sure we won't. To be honest, I'm not so sure I love her anymore. I love the idea of being with her, but I'm not sure I love her. 11:30 p.m. Absolutely busting to tell someone about the mustard gas, but if I go to Coral's at this time of night, I'll spook her. A herd of spooked Pleasant Avenues will cause damage. I decide to write everything I know about the missing plane down so it's clear in my head. So the following is the original document with minor changes. Here we go. I'm almost certain now that Mr. Gumley is involved in a plot to overthrow the government. Before you scoff at this suggestion, there have been other such coup attempts in the history of Australia. I refer to a paramilitary organisation in the late 1920s called the New Guard and its sinister underbelly, the old guard. The new guard were just as suburban as Pleasant Avenue is. Most of its members hailed from the North Shore of Sydney. Most were ex-officers disgruntled with the Australia they returned to after the war, and what's more, their leader, Colonel Campbell, was just as respectable as Mr. Gumley. At TAFE, we touched on Australian political life in the 1920s and compared it with Italy and Germany. That's how I know about the New Guard and their plot to take over the New South Wales government. They planned to kidnap Premier Jack Lang to stop him opening the Sydney Harbour Bridge. The New Guard felt a representative of the Queen should have the honour, so they intended to hold Lang in the then disused Berrima Jail while Governor-General Sir Philip Game opened the bridge. You may or may not recall that a member of the New Guard, one Captain de Groot, opened the Sydney Harbour Bridge by default in 1932, chopping through the pale blue ceremonial ribbon with his borrowed sabre. The New Guard had enough weapons and enough members to take over the government. Who's to say Mr. Gumley is not plotting something similar? He fronts the government secretly, says there's mustard gas in the dam, and if he doesn't get what he wants, he'll release it into the water supply. Here are the facts. A plane that possibly belongs to Mr. Gumley goes missing. Publicly, they say the plane is missing. Privately, we know it's been found in the dam. There are 2 eyewitness accounts. This is not the only plane that's gone missing in the area either. 4 other planes have disappeared in the same area, and they've never been found either. There's Mal Gumley, who, according to Mr. Price, is in Townsville. The missing plane is from Townsville. And finally, both the military and ASIO are involved. As I put the pen down, I feel sick. It hits me like a shoulder charge. I'm living next door to a person who could be involved in a plot to take over my country. Imagine when the news crews get onto this. They'll be looking for stories about the Gumleys. My story will not only reach Pleasant Avenue, it will go worldwide. Who would have thought a car driving through a set of front gates would lead to this?